Good afternoon. The additional day probably doesn't lessen the sting of defeat, nor should it. You know, we've lost two close ball games here the last 2 weeks, and we've had our opportunity. And so, you know, there's a certain response that comes to that. You know, we recognize that football is our game, our business is winning, and so we haven't been handling business. And so we're taking a look at ourselves and looking at what transpired in the game, and I'll outline specifically what transpired kind of in San Francisco, most of which I kind of outlined after the game in terms of why we were not successful. The turnover element of play and the aftermath of it was significant, I thought. We got some significant turnovers at the early portions of the game. We put our offense on the short field, and we settled for field goals. And, you know, usually there's consequences of not supporting yourself in that way to really kind of maximize the positive. And so, although we were in control of the game, we were not in control of the game in the ways that we could have been had we punched some of those opportunities in. And then in the second half, we turned the ball over twice, and our defense was on the short field. And again, we didn't support ourselves in the ways that we would like to minimize negativity. Our defense took the field, and we gave up touchdowns. And couple that with the fact that, you know, we seemingly had an opportunity, particularly in the last possession, to get off. We had them in a third and 11 or so, and we had a penalty, a DPI. It's pretty frustrating. It's similar to Seattle when we got those guys off and we got a penalty on a field goal attempt that put us back on the field, and we subsequently gave up a touchdown. So obviously the penalty element of play is significant. We haven't been penalized a large number of times thus far this year, but some of the penalties have been significant in terms of the outcome of football games. So we're working hard in that area. We're also working hard in terms of making the necessary plays and winning our one-on-ones positionally in all three areas of the game. Obviously, the possession down element of play offensively was a problem for us early in the game, and that had a lot to do with us not being able to capitalize on some of the field positioning. We just, in general, have to do a better job of being competitive and winning our share of third downs. I thought we were really conscious and thoughtful to being third and manageable, but even at 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 4, some of the things that we had in the first half of the game, it just took us too long to really warm up and win some of those possession downs. I think the first time we won one was in the last possession of the first half. And so we got to find ways to get off the bus cleaner and better. Obviously, establishment of the run will aid us in that, but also the winning of those downs, like we talked about last week, will provide more snap opportunities for us in an effort to find fluidity in the running game. Obviously, we dealt with some things in game from a player availability standpoint that made all of those things a little bit more difficult. Vance McDonald went down in game. Xavier Grimble went down in game. Larger part of the second half of the game. The only tight end we had available to us was Zach Gentry, and coupled with the unavailability of Roosevelt Nix, man, we really were limited in terms of some of the things that we could do offensively, particularly as it regards to running the football. So we got some things to clean up there. I think that's one of the reasons why we acquired Nick and went out and acquired Nick. Not that we're counting tight ends out this week, but their availability is in question. We needed to fortify our depths at that position, just like we needed to fortify our depths at the safety position a week ago. Speaking of that, I'll give you a line or two about what transpired with Mika. Was really impressed by his ability to learn in a short period of time and to absorb the number of snaps he was able to absorb. And kudos not only goes to him, but, you know, in an effort to simplify things for him, we asked some additional things of others. And for the large part, we got what we needed there. It'll be good to get him with some additional time and to be able to continue for him to learn the depths of what it is that we do and have a better understanding. I think that's not going to do anything but aid him in terms of his productivity and us collectively as he gains a footing back there, particularly working with Edmonds. It was some positive things to glean from the game, but again, we're not looking for positive things to glean from it. We're not being weak-minded in that way. We're acknowledging that winning is our business and we got to handle business. So we're excited about preparing this week and working to put together a formula. You know, we got AFC North ball, we got Monday night ball, we got a lot of things that naturally get you excited. But just an opportunity to get this group back into a stadium and continue to work on the things that we need to work in an effort to change our outcome. I think the competitor in all of us is excited about that. I also think the competitor in all of us is a little bit pissed off, and appropriately so. Again, we got to do what we have to do to close ball games out and to get ball games started faster. Obviously, the start doesn't define games, but boy, we're really putting ourselves behind the 8 ball with our inability to win some possession downs and really some very manageable possession downs. So looking at Mason's performance, I thought he warmed up as the game went on. I think that, is reasonable to expect him to be upward and onward from there. The quality of performance wasn't always what we wanted or what he wanted, but I did really like his demeanor, his communication, his awareness in the midst of all of that. Sometimes you get a chance to learn things about yourselves and one another in regular season in-game action. It was good to see that he's a good communicator in the midst of all of those things and really accountable guy, a guy that's comfortable in his skin. I think, that's going to aid him in terms of getting the productivity and the consistent level of production to the direction that he needs it and we need it in an effort to be successful. Quickly, I'll outline some injury type things, and I'll get into Cincinnati. Rosie Nix is probably still out again this week with his knee injury. Some of the other guys that have missed time are more in the questionable category, and their availability will be dictated by practice availability and the quality of their work in those practices. Those guys being Chickalo, Vance McDonald, Grimble, Vince Williams. Getting comfortable with Joe Hayden, working through what he's been able to work through. He's been available to us the last couple of weeks. It still may limit him at the early portions of the week from a practice participation standpoint, but like the overall direction of his health. Now I'll quickly turn to Cincinnati. It's an interesting thing getting ready to play Cincinnati this time around because particularly in recent years, the continuity that they've had in players and schematics and the continuity in players and schematics that we've had has always started the strategy of preparation kind of on third base. We know and understand them intimately. They know and understand us intimately, but it's interesting to look at the new regime and see some of the familiar faces, but the different ways they're employing them. And so that produces some interesting challenges for us. On the offensive side of the ball, obviously they're still without A.J. Green, but they were without A.J. Green a year ago, and I really think that Tyler Boyd has done an awesome job of selling into his role as a lead dog type of a guy. He did a year ago. It's continuing this year. I'm seeing some growth and development big time in terms of productivity from John Ross, their first-round draft pick from a couple years ago. The early portions of his career was slowed by injuries and so forth, but, man, he's off to a fast start and providing splash plays for them and displaying some of the skills that made him a first-round pick. His top-end speed is unique, and you see that on tape. The utilization of tight ends with the return of Tyler is significant for them. They got multiple tight end sets. Both guys are really talented, and they do a good job of spreading the ball around to those guys, particularly the tight end screen game and so forth. The division of labor at the running back position with Joe Mixon and Gio is something that's been in place for those guys. And really, when you look at those guys that I'm mentioning, those guys have been together for a number of years. The scheme itself is new to them, but Tyler Boyd and John Ross and Tyler at tight end and the two running backs have been core components of their offensive unit now for a number of years. So we're excited about that element of the matchup and working to familiarize ourselves with some of the new things that they do. On the defensive side of the ball, it's the same thing. They got some familiar faces, but they're employing them differently. You talk about their defense, you always talk about the wave that the men up front has provided over the years. Carlos Dunlap, Geno Atkins, and now Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard was a high-round draft pick out of Ohio State, worked his way into significant time last year, and now is taking a significant step, starting the opposite of Dunlap. Those guys are still providing a wave that the rest of the defense is able to feed off of. They got some new faces on the back end in terms of stand-up. Burfict is no longer there. Adam Jones is no longer there. But, man, the core of that secondary, the umbrella, if you will, is in place. They got a quality corner tandem in Fitzpatrick and Williams. Man, those guys are really good at bump and run coverage and playing on the line of scrimmage. They're long. They got really good top end speed. They're good in those ways. This is the second year in a row now for the safety tandem. Jesse Bates was a rookie a year ago, but he's back there again with Sean Williams. They got a nice division of labor, and those guys really complement each other well. Bates being a ball guy and Sean Williams being a guy that's really good against the run and displaying good physicality. They got continuity in the special teams game. Their coordinator is still the same. A lot of their core players within their special teams unit that make the plays for them remains the same. So we'll have a high-level matchup there, if you will. But the important thing for us this week is less about the people that we're playing, and obviously it's about finding the mix in terms of divisional labor as we add people and define roles and determine who's available for us, and then rolling the ball out there and doing enough things to win the game. And so obviously we seek perfection, but obviously what we need to do is get a win, and that's going to be our focus as we prepare. And some of the other things, man, we're building for the short term. We're building for the long term in terms of development of people. But some of these new people, man, we got to get them infused and be thoughtful about what we need them to do this week, because our desire, obviously, is to play and win this game. Excited about the Hall of Honor induction ceremony that's going on Monday night, man. Some legendary Steelers, man. Looking forward to honoring those guys. And the best way for us to honor those guys is with the winning performance. Questions?
Yeah, Mike, who are you trying to develop in the long term right now?
I'm talking about, just like I talked about Minka, you do things in the short term to get them ready to play in stadium, but then you also do things, you double back in terms of continued teaching to add depths to the assignment element of play. Sometimes when you have 3 practices or 3 days to get a guy ready to play, you tell him what he needs to know, as opposed to telling him all the things that really kind of encompass some of the understanding things that allow people to play at the highest level. And so that's what I mean when I say short-term and long-term. We got new guys like Nick. We got to, get him ready to do the certain things that we need him to do in this stadium, but also acknowledging, as we move forward, there's going to be more depth to that teaching and the understanding.
Mike, in terms of your approach to team building, knowing you have to coach this team beyond this season, was there any hesitation from you at all when you found out it was going to take a first-rounder to get Minka?
No, I think I outlined that pretty well a week ago. No.
Mike, when you said earlier, our business is winning and we haven't been winning, how do you juggle now between, maybe the future with draft picks and things like that?
I don't know it's anything that we're juggling, man. We're just singularly focused on Monday night and winning this football game.
Mike, your offensive line is a group that's been together. It's been a rock on this team. Have they been providing you with what you need thus far this year?
I don't think any of us have been providing us with enough of what we need because, like I mentioned, we hadn't been handling our business. And so, you can seek comfort by eliminating some of us from that equation, or you can assign blame by highlighting others. But the bottom line is, man, there's more meat on the bone for all of us. And we all got to look within and really analyze what we're doing into the quality in which we're doing it. And the offensive line is no different than anyone else, player or coach, in that regard.
Like everybody talked about Rudolph and the ones being together in college, and they thought that it would be more of a comfort zone and then performing. So did you take anything from the fact that they really didn't mesh during the San Francisco game at all?
No, not overly. I'm not looking for extra credit because of their past experience. The reality is that both guys are in their second year here, and they've spent some time together here. And you know how open we are about challenging those in their second year to show the natural signs that come with the second lap around the track and being a part of us and understanding how we function and their role within it. And so from that standpoint, I'm looking for continuity, not necessarily because of their past experiences together in Stillwater.
Mike, 2 things about your run defense. First, the players themselves yesterday were critical of their own performance in stopping the run. Where specifically would you like to see them get better against the opposing run? And do you expect to see a more heavy dose of Mixon after he got more involved in the offense last week?
I don't have any control over how Cincinnati formulates their plan. I know we better be ready for that. So I don't necessarily have a comment regarding what their intentions are. But I agree with our guys. They should be angry because of the quality of our performance in that area. It wasn't always significant, but just it was too many times that the power was falling forward. And so, it's better technique, is more physicality in terms of taking on blocks to minimize vertical holes, so there's not more space as plays come to an end. I just thought too many times in the game, the runner was able to fall forward, and that usually has very little to do with the quality of the tackle and has more to do with how we're combating blockers and minimizing space relative to that, whether it's horizontally or vertically. I think that's an area of the game that I thought we could have been better at. San Francisco has a very good perimeter game, but it shouldn't lessen our physicality at the point of attack in terms of how we combat people. That allows us to constrict running lanes horizontally. That allows us at the second level when we come downhill to constrict running lanes vertically. And I think those are two general reasons why the power falls forward in football in general.
Mike, when you have a team that's accustomed to winning, how do you deal with managing their personalities when they're in a losing streak?
It's not anything to manage. We didn't come into this thing with any, preconceived notions about us being anointed in any way. Each season starts anew, and past things or past experiences or successes mean very little in this thing. And I think that, culturally we understand that. I think we spend a lot of time talking about that. And so from that perspective, we're not combating that in any way directly. I think more than anything, we're dealing with the fact that we're not getting the job done and managing that frustration and channeling that frustration into productive work and the desired outcome.
Mike, are you considering using all of your running backs and spreading out the carries?
We are. We utilize all three in San Fran, but really, things of that nature, the utilization of people really occurs when you're converting third downs. And I know I sound like a broken record, but when you're, 0 for 4 or 0 for 5, man, in your first 4 or 5 possessions relative to third downs, you don't get an opportunity to establish rhythm in any area of play, whether it's a division of labor, the utilization of multiple people, or the establishment of run game. So, I acknowledge that we have intentions in that regard, but none of that stuff is really going to come to fruition until we're moving the ball a little bit more fluidly, particularly on possession downs.
Mike, aside from the tight ends that you have, are any other position players capable of working in a fullback role?
Not at a varsity level, not at a level that merits, some of the situations that you call on the fullback in, short yardage and goal line and others. But, we have some other ways at our disposal to level the playing field and create opportunities for ourselves there. It just got a little thin in San Fran when we lost the 2 additional tight ends coupled with the fullback position. But such is life, man, in the National Football League. We're not making any excuses for the outcome of the game based on that. It's our job to adapt and improvise and overcome.
Mike, how much more will Mason have at his disposal at the line of scrimmage to make changes this week?
We're formulating a plan relative to what's best for us against Cincinnati, and all of those things are still very much in development.
Mike, what did you like about Nick Vannett, and how much did you know about him? I think I saw that you reported that you were at his pro day at Ohio State. How much did your interest in him go back that far?
Yeah, it did, and I'm very familiar with him. Ohio State's one of the schools that I'm at kind of annually, and so you got a good feel for some of those guys. I remember looking at specifically he and his pro day, but you couple that also, we just played those guys a short number of weeks ago, so I familiarized myself with him in today's ball in terms of the things that he provided against them. He made a few plays against us a week ago, vertical passing game and so forth, that really kind of is consistent with what we've expected and seen from him. And also, he was a handy teamer. I mean, this is a guy that started on their punt team and their kickoff return team against us just 2 weeks ago. So, he has an opportunity to be helpful to us, even if Vance, runs the course and is able to be available to us in the game. And let me say, I'm optimistic about Vance being available to us in the game, but may be limited in some form or fashion. So adding quality depth like Nick is significant.
Mike, what is your corresponding roster move to make room for Nick?
We have until 4 o'clock.
Anyone else? All right.
Great. Thank you, guys.